Under the beautiful post-apocalyptic sky, a woman walked on the road, occasionally encountering a few scattered zombies. Carol easily dealt with the zombies. Soon, Carol arrived at the gate of the kingdom, where 5 or 6 zombies were lurking. Carol found a billboard, climbed up a tree, and skillfully eliminated the zombies one by one. Inside the kingdom, the people noticed the commotion and opened the gate, witnessing Carol's effortless zombie-killing skills. Leaving them stunned, they recognized Carol, and Benjamin was particularly excited, wondering how the seemingly delicate woman could be so powerful. Carol comes to the kingdom to ask about Morgan, Daryl, and Rick. She wanted to know what they were doing here a few days ago and if anything had happened to the community. She had a feeling that Daryl was hiding something from her. Though Morgan did not directly answer, Carol had her suspicions. Morgan continued, saying that he followed Carol's request not to tell others about her whereabouts and not to reveal her actions. Daryl found her on his own. Morgan offered to accompany Carol back to Alexandria's safe zone if she wanted to go back. Carol fell silent, contemplating her decision, and eventually turned and left. Carol was conflicted, as she worried about the safety of her friends but also yearned for seclusion and wanted to avoid any further bloodshed. Benjamin caught up with her and suggested that if she didn't mind, he could escort her back to her cabin. Today, they were supposed to go for tribute, but he can skip it. Hearing this, Carol paused. Benjamin explained that he was trying to learn survival skills. There were 5 zombies at the gate earlier, and if Carol could teach him how she dealt with them, he would be grateful. Today was the day the kingdom was making their tribute again. Ezekiel stood quietly, observing the scenes in the distance. Teachers were instructing children, fathers were taking their babies for a stroll, and people seemed to be living contentedly. That's why Ezekiel doesn't want to work with Rick and doesn't want the people of the kingdom to know about the saviors, so the tributes are done quietly, and this week they're paying tribute to 12 cantaloupes. Soon, the group set off for the tribute location, but after just 5 minutes of walking, their path was blocked. Richard, holding a gun, went to investigate. The road was blocked by a row of shopping carts, but there was no sign of anyone around. The rest of the group got out of the car and remained vigilant, fearing an ambush. To be safe, they decided to inspect the surroundings. As they reached a corner, they noticed a hole in the ground with a message written on it. "Bury me here." It's obvious that someone has prepared a grave for himself. Everyone couldn't help but feel how this world had driven people insane. They found nothing unusual after checking around and moved the shopping carts aside. However, the saviors were already waiting at the tribute location. Jared was swinging with Morgan's stick for half an hour. The kingdom is just arriving. As Ezekiel stepped out of the car, he hurriedly explained that they had encountered a situation on the road.
King.
Ezekiel was angry, too, but dared not speak out. They moved out of the way to allow Gavin to inspect the tribute. Gavin went behind the door of the car and counted the number of cantaloupes, then said, Ezekiel thought that the saviors were being greedy and that this was not stipulated in the agreement. He immediately raised his gun and prepared for a confrontation. Gavin, without looking back, said, "You have a choice. Either surrender your guns or start shooting. You can try and see which one you'll choose." Richard, in an unusual move, suggested that they should just surrender their guns. Morgan, too, added that it would be better to avoid a tragedy over a mere stick. Reluctantly, Ezekiel had his people hand over their guns, leaving them feeling frustrated. Gavin continued, saying that the reason they took away their guns was because they knew they might get emotional. The tribute they offered was 1 cantaloupe short, and the saviors demanded 12, not 11. Ezekiel went to inspect the goods and confirmed the shortage. He was puzzled, as he had carefully counted the cantaloupes before getting into the car. The reality was right in front of him. Gavin took away their guns. He was going to make them pay. He was going to teach them a good lesson. Ezekiel tried to persuade Gavin that they would deliver twice the tribute within an hour, but Gavin insisted that the agreed-upon time was now, not an hour later, and they failed to fulfill their obligation. Moreover, he had repeatedly warned them not to make any mistakes, otherwise they would have to face the consequences. Jared understood that, according to the Savior's rules, someone had to be killed in this situation. Jared aimed his gun directly at Richard. The others looked at each other but didn't dare to move at all, or the incident would only get worse. Richard took a step forward and said, "No one expected Benjamin to be the one who got shot.
We need to get Benjamin back to the kingdom."
Give the man his damn stick! Get in the truck! Don't say a goddamn word!
We need to get back.
No! Right now, you have to listen. For once, be present and listen. You will make your deliveries on time, every time, and they will be complete. It's A's or F's, no I's. You are going to show me that you understand by bringing the balance of what you owe tomorrow.
We need to go. He's bleeding out.
One cantaloupe, not more, not less. Do you understand?
Yes, I understand.
Go patch him up.
He was bleeding profusely and couldn't make it back to the kingdom. Ezekiel decided to go to Carol's place nearby, as he had left many medical supplies there. Richard's face was sad, with some self-loathing in his expression.
Hey! Get in!
Carol was still sowing seeds in the yard when she saw the car speeding in the distance and felt something bad. They didn't have time to explain after the car stopped. Stopping the bleeding was the most important thing. Time is of the essence. Richard prayed guiltily. Unfortunately, no matter how hard he tried, the bandage he had just put on was soaked with blood and he couldn't stop it. Ezekiel holds Benjamin's hand and tells him not to worry and to hang in there. And the kid looks at Morgan. This sentence was Morgan's teaching of the way of peace to Benjamin. But now it sounds very ironic. Half an hour later, Benjamin left the world due to his bleeding wounds, and the atmosphere in the room was filled with sadness. Everyone loved this optimistic and positive young boy, especially Morgan, who considered him not just a student but like a son. Later, Morgan went back to the place where they were stopped on the road. Remembering the past scenes, he wondered if his insistence on the way of peace was truly right. Why did they have to treat a child like this?
Stay away from me. Just listen.
Morgan was stunned. The disappeared cantaloupe was right there. Could today's events have been intentionally orchestrated? The person he thought of was Richard. When the cantaloupe was thrown in front of Richard, he didn't object. Guilt-ridden Richard says that he's the one who deserves to die, and that according to Jared's hatred of him, he should be the one to be killed. Richard deliberately blocked their path, causing a delay in the tribute, and secretly hid a cantaloupe. He wanted his death to serve as a wake-up call for everyone, to inspire Ezekiel to rebel against the saviors, but he hadn't expected it would lead to Benjamin's death. Morgan remained silent, just watching Richard. Richard then recounted his past, living in a camp where, during times of danger, he always believed there would be someone more capable to take charge. He waited, always believing that someone higher would hold up the sky, but when a real fire broke out, Richard's wife and daughter died right in front of him because he kept waiting. He didn't want the kingdom to experience such tragedy again. After hearing all this, Morgan's face softened slightly. Richard approached Morgan and said pleadingly, "Morgan, I know you're an advocate of peace, but can we really keep blood off our hands in this world? Today's tragedy has already occurred, and we can use it to our advantage. We must do something more to prove to the saviors that we've learned a lesson and ensure this won't happen again. Let the saviors believe in us. Once we regain their trust, we can join Rick's alliance and eliminate the saviors." Regarding Benjamin's death, Richard said he would confess to King Ezekiel and spend the rest of his life making amends. That night, Morgan sat alone in his room, pondering Richard's words. The next day, Ezekiel led everyone back to the tribute site.
Did you tell him?
Richard shook his head, indicating it wasn't the right time. Morgan's face turned grim. Then Morgan walked forward, looking at the two sticks on the ground. One was his, and the other belonged to his disciple. It pained him deeply. Soon, the saviors arrived again, and upon seeing them, Gavin understood what had happened. Gavin isn't as cold-blooded and cruel as the rest of the saviors.
He's dead. Start walking back now before I kill you. You say one word or throw one look, I'll kill you right here and now. Go!
Richard handed the cantaloupe to Gavin, speaking pleasant words, aiming to win the Savior's trust.
I just want to say, we get it. We understand.
Leave him be!
Morgan! Stop! Morgan!
The onlookers couldn't believe their eyes. Morgan, who always advocated peace and kindness, was acting so ferociously. Only when Richard stopped breathing did Morgan regain his composure.
He set it all up. He blocked the road yesterday, made us late. It was all him. And we had your offering when we left. Had it all. He took one from the cargo and he hid it when we stopped. He wanted to get something started between the kingdom and the saviors. Hey.
Morgan then walked up to Gavin.
That we know how to go on.
Good. Next week, same time.
We understand.
Morgan listens to Richard and gains the Savior's trust by killing Richard as a price. In the end, Morgan asked everyone else to leave and stayed alone outside. He then dragged Richard's body and buried him in the prepared pit. At this time, a group of zombies came outside. Morgan's expressionless face killed the zombies. The zombies became the object of his anger. This incident drastically changed Morgan's demeanor, and he abandoned the idea of a peaceful path. Morgan knocks on Carol's door. Carol opens the door to see why Morgan is here covered in blood. It looks like something happened. Before Carol could ask, Morgan said, "Do you really want to know what happened in Alexandria Safe Zone?" Carol nodded.
Negan killed Glenn and Abraham.
What?
Beat him to death with a baseball bat. Now the saviors have Alexandria and Rick and everybody else. Everything they do is for the saviors now. And they killed more. Killed Spencer, Olivia. Jesus brought Rick and the rest here because Rick wants to fight him. You wanted to know. Now you do.
After speaking, Morgan turned and left. From now on, he'll stay out and kill any member of the Saviors he comes across. Carol tried to stop him, urging him not to act recklessly, and offered him a place to stay in her cabin for a while. Having learned about the situation in Alexandria's safe zone, Carol returned to the kingdom, preparing to reclaim everything for her family.
Thank you.
I'm gonna be here now. We have to get ready. We have to fight.
We do.
Ezekiel was also finally ready to resist, and Morgan was sitting in front of the hut at the moment, sharpening his stick with a knife. Killing Morgan is officially awakened.